Shalom, shalom, following Yahshua. Welcome again to the Rock. And here we are, finally working on our outdoor oven. This is going to be the oven portion of it, where we can do our baking. So, essentially what we did is, I semi-leveled the ground. I wasn't really all that interested in getting meticulous in the leveling. Put the cinder block down. That's right next to our other two cook stations. I put cinder block down to form the base. As you can see, this is the burn chamber where we're going to be burning our wood to get the heat. So I put cinder block down and around, and then I use rebar. I use 7 rebar going across this way, going all the way back. Then I put this chicken wire on top of the rebar, and then put rocks on top of that. As you can see right now, what Sister Lydia is doing is she is actually plastering the rocks, because this is going to be where the food is going to cook, or is going to bake. So this is going to be the inside of the oven right now, what you're looking at. And we just put rocks on top of it to hold the clay in. As you can see, she's covering up the gaps in the rocks. Yeah, keep going. She's covering up the gaps with clay. Now on the bottom we did fill the cells in with clay. So all the bottom cells in the cinder block is filled. As you can see in the top, they're all filled with clay. I did put the chicken wire also underneath the brick for the next level. So what we're doing right here is, these are going to be, when the fire is burning down here in the burn chamber, these little spots, that one there and that one there, is going to allow the heat to come through the chicken wire and the rebar into the stove area to heat the, oven, breads, whatever it may be. Then I'm going 2 cinder block high. So there's one. We're going to fill these cells and put another cinder block on top of those, all the way around, and then fill those cells. And I'm going to do the same thing. How I did this one, how I did the bottom part. I'm going to put rebar, chicken wire, rocks, and then coat it with probably 3 to 4 inches of rock and this clay, it's clay dirt mix, and put a thermometer through the clay into the oven. And I'm also going to run a small pipe out of the oven on both sides, and that's to regulate the temperature. So that's going to be how they regulate the temperature. I'm going to make a little valve on it so that they can open it up all the way or close it down however much they need to get rid of any excess heat to control the temperature that is in here. Now, people say, what tools did you use? I mean, literally a shovel. And here's the rebar that we're going to use for the top of the stove. Everybody always asks about tools. You don't have to have the fanciest and best tools. I'm sure you can have metal cutters. I have those. Chop saws and all that. I just use my Harbor Freight $10 angle grinder with cutoff wheel, the 4.5-inch cutoff wheel. That's it. And a measuring tape. And then the rest of it is just using your manpower, using yourself, using your strength, using her hands. So she's mixing the paste, the clay paste, and this is going to be the inside of the oven. So once we're done with this and we're done with the cells here, I'm going to light a fire and let this cook and harden underneath here. And then we're going to work on the next set of block around here. Here I have to, because this stove kind of cut in, so I can't put a cinder block and have it be flush with that one because of these stones that are right here. So I'm putting these stones up here. I'm gonna make a thicker clay and just pack it right here, and then make it level to this cinder block, and then stack the other cinder block on top of it. But this is what we're doing. Making ourselves, they asked for an oven. They're willing to put in the labor for an oven. So we are building an oven, an outdoor oven for them to cook their breads, pizzas, roasts, the same way you'd use your regular in-house oven. We're going to use this one. So let me show you what she's doing right here, how she's making her thinner clay. See, I'm gonna use this right here. This is what I'll use to pack the rocks with. But what she's doing is she's actually getting the real sloppy. It's basically this stuff watered down heavily. So she's getting it and then mixing it with a little bit of water to make it real fine. But this is the clay that we're using. And then all I'll do with this is essentially that. And that's how I bind the rocks together. That's how I built this one. And that's how this whole stove right here was built, was just clay and rocks. And then what I'll probably do after that is make a cement slip, or I'll make a clay slip, whatever. And I'm gonna trim the chicken wire off this, but I'll make a clay slip and kind of coat the outside of the bricks with it all the way around, probably inch thick, and that'll hold really nicely, and also it'll make sure none of the heat escapes from the oven, because the cinder blocks do have those little gaps. We're gonna fill those in. It's no problem. We did it with this stove that we've used heavily. So we're not using that bucket. No, don't use the bucket. We're keeping that bucket. I don't want.
Can I use the water from you?
Oh yeah, go ahead for it. Oh, there's water right here too. So you can use what is there on your land to make many different things. You know, I really do like how people in the olden days used clay. They use clay, they've made cob, and I've really enjoyed using earthen materials. You see, anytime we see rocks that we think may be good for building, we just gather it, we'll pile it here. Over here we actually have, you've seen our garden beds, how they're just, a lot of them are just tree trunks that have fallen over and are now decomposing. But right here we have a slate that I'm going to be using in our shower, and this whole bucket is filled with just slate. Literally a slate type rock. So use the earthen materials that you have on your land to better your life. I mean, majority of this stuff is free. What, cinder blocks, some chicken wire, and some rebar. And I bought those were 10-foot rebar. They were 10-foot rebars I just cut to size, and I think they're like $2.50 per rebar. And I think I've used 6 of them. So for less than $50, less than $40, we're gonna have an outdoor large surface. They can put a lot of food in here. Large surfaced oven that they can use for baking. What was that? Rebecca just said a lot of bread. For baking, pizza, homemade pizza. I love homemade pizza. Love homemade pizza. Pies, all sorts of things that we've been waiting to do. And we made the sacrifice and said, we're going to wait until we can get these things built, and praise Yah, the opportunities have arisen. We have the time when we can get these things done. So always be willing to put in that work. And then also, this is a great skill because as times continue to get worse, and people are going to want to have the skill of learning how to cook, not using, propane or stuff like that. Because right now we're using some propane, but usually in the summer, spring and fall, we probably cook, I would say, upwards of 30 to 50% of our meals actually on open fire. Lydia says that she's been here about 70% just on our open fire pits. And your land is always going to have stuff like this. It's always going to be fuel that you can use to heat water. And then we have the wood stoves inside that, and we're actually doing a lot of cooking right now on the wood stoves in the house. And I have more projects on that. I actually have a in-house cob stove oven plan for in the house. Basically a rocket stove that I'm going to be using cob to build it in the home, and it's going to be used to heat and cook. So stay tuned to that one. And I mean, that's probably, a good year away, but here we are. Hallelujah. So use the material that the land yields. It's a beautiful thing. Bless y'all. I'll do another video when we have the finished product. Shalom.